Do start in Lansing tonight, where Todd and Cindy Gamrat are telling their sides of the story to a special House committee. Both say they should be censured and not expelled for the botched attempt to cover up their affair. As of our taping time, the committee has not yet made its recommendation, and that is where we start tonight with our MiWeek contributors Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Hey guys, there's nothing I like more than sitting down to read an 833-page report on Todd and Cindy Gamrat. Did you guys read this?
Not all 833 pages.
No. Did you scan through it just a little bit?
A little bit.
All right,
it's
so
like, search, right? Find and search.
You just
look for certain words.
You look for the sexy parts.
I look for the dirty words.
And is that how it went? See, this is maybe what's wrong with the entire situation. All right, so what do you think of the testimony so far that we've seen, Nolan, and what kind of impact is this making?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're taping before the House is going to decide what it's going to do. But, I mean, clearly there was abuse of office, abuse of resources. I think the question for the House members was whether it rises, the actual abuse rises to an offense great enough to boot them out. It's a serious thing to remove an elected official, an official the people have put into office without consulting the people. So, you know, I think they're going to have to give some careful deliberation to it. I think the behavior after the offense has been really the egregious part of this, and I don't know how that's going to factor in.
Do you believe what you have heard and what you have read rises to the offense that they should be expelled?
I don't know. I think it's close. I think the offense, as I said, the offense itself, perhaps not. Perhaps censure is adequate for that. I don't know that there was a knowing, willful abuse of taxpayer resources. Perhaps there was, but I don't know if it was as so far out of line from normal practice up there that they could boot them out without setting precedent. I think the behavior in the cover-up and his bizarre actions in particular, you know, could rise to that. But I think it's a tough decision for him.
You know, yeah, it's absolutely a tough decision. But you just said some of the practices may not be out of the realm of what actually goes up there in Lansing, which I find highly disturbing, because when I read through this report, and I did not read every single word of every single page.
You were using search too.
I was not using search, but I looked through there, and to me it was the biggest example of incompetence in management of offices that I have ever really read.
Is the sort of wild card here. I think we all sort of became aware of this because of a private matter between the two of them. And this investigation, though, has unearthed, I think, a series of other issues that predate even that. I mean, the manner in which these two sort of conducted themselves as elected members of the House was inappropriate. It seems like from the beginning. They clearly didn't understand what they were doing there or what the obligation was, and just did whatever they wanted to do.
Or it didn't surround themselves with the best people for the job in terms of administrative staff.
Do that, and then this weird thing between these two offices that I mean, I can't imagine what it was like for the people who worked for them. That seems well beyond what any elected official should be doing, and I think that has to weigh into the decision about whether they should stay or go. It's not just now. It's not just about whether they misused public resources to cover up this affair. It's have they done anything appropriate as elected officials?
Yeah, but I
mean,
mean, you have to put it, though, again, in the greater context of Lansing, which has become, you know, because of term limits, a very unprofessional
a lot of people don't know what
place.
they're doing, right?
A lot of people don't know what they're doing, and you know, a lot of their incompetence and their mismanagement isn't willful. It's just you got a whole lot of people in Lansing don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, but you say that with a straight face, and you say that very calm. But to me, and yeah, it's true. How disturbing is that? I mean, that should be disturbing.
That's why we're raising hell about term limits.
Most of all to this. All right. Well, let me ask you, Stephen, because I asked Nolan the same thing. Do you believe, from what you've heard this week in the testimony and from what you've read in that 800+ page report, that both of them should be expelled?
Well, I don't think there's any question about Courser, and I think the House lawyer's testimony, was it yesterday or the day before, really laid out why he is not really going to be able to stay. I mean, I don't think that was questionable at all. I think Gamrat is a little more on the line there. But again, that's just looking at the conduct in the wake of this private affair and all this other stuff. That's not taking into account. I mean, the House lawyer wasn't talking about how they've conducted themselves since they've been there, and I think that, to me, is the thing that pushes both of them over. I mean, I think if the House wants to retain any sort of respect with voters around the state, you say, this is not what service looks like, this is not what an elected official is expected to do, and you cannot stay here with the rest of us.
The honorable thing would have been for them both to resign, but there's not much honor in
They're not
public
gonna do
life
that.
anymore. But I'm also
And they're both
asking,
begging to keep their jobs. They really want to stay.
they do, and
you got to wonder, what is that for? What do they want to do? These
Or
are not
what can they
people who
do?
could
What
be
can they do
effective
if they
in
do
any-
stay?
They cannot be taken seriously by any of their colleagues. There's no way they can even as far as constituent services go. You wonder how much credibility they would have staying until next year. There is no public benefit to them staying. It is totally about them.
Well,
and yet in the Senate, you also have Virgil Smith still sitting there, a guy who has
Shouldn't be
gone
there.
into court and said, "Hey, I'm crazy," and no action has been taken. I mean, I think that as an institution, the legislature is really losing respect,
I mean,
losing credibility.
One of the things that I think pretty soon we need to talk about, and we have needed to talk about for a while, is if you're going to reform term limits, if you're going to reform the time that the legislature is there, if you're going to reform redistricting, we also need to reform the rules that govern public service in these chambers. I mean, and I'm going to beat this dead horse again. If we had had a constitutional convention when it came up,
here we go.
These are the kinds of things we could have talked about and dealt with. And I get the fear about special interests taking over that and making us talk about abortion or euthanasia or whatever the whole time. Certainly that would have been a problem, but it would also have been the opportunity, the proper opportunity, to deal with some of this stuff, and we passed on it for I think, illegitimate reasons.
All right, two quick things before we leave Lansing conversation. One, Cindy Gamrat went back this week to her district and had a meeting, and she was faced with a lot of angry people. Do you think there's a possibility, if both of them end up staying in censure, that there could be some kind of recall effort? Let me ask you, Nolan.
Well, I would doubt it. I mean, the recall rules were tightened after the Paul Scott recall a couple of years ago, and with the election coming up now, a year off, I would say the focus will be on posting somebody, standing somebody in the primary to unseat her. I would suspect if these two do survive this, they won't survive the next election.
All right, and are we really going to talk about roads next week once this is finally?
They've been talking about
roads this week, and they seem somewhat close, and it actually seems I don't agree with the substance of the deal. I think I still think it should be all new revenue that we're committing to roads, but it's a deal, and they seem close, and they also seem to be close without some of the horse trading that I was fearful that they would be.
Well,
Last word on the deal.
In essence, it is all new revenue because there's already $400 million in the budget for roads, and so what they're proposing is to raise another $800 million through a combination of gas tax, 9-cent gas tax, $50 average hike in the registration fee. Add that to the $400 million that's already in there, and you got $1.2 billion without cutting anything else, without reprioritizing any other spending. What the worry is this Medicaid expansion under Obamacare is going to eat the budget alive over the next 5-10 years, and they're trying to build, the governor is trying to build some buffer into the budget. I don't know if that's possible.
All right, well, we'll see how far this roads proposal gets.